नहमदुहु व नुसल्ली अला रसूलिहिल करीम अम्मा बाद फ़ाऊज़ु बिल्लाहि मिनश शैतानिर रजीम बिस्मिल्लाहिर रहमानिर रहीम. Today we are going to critically appraise an article which is being published in New England Journal of Medicine. I am Dr. Fatma Dalal Chaudhary and I am an MPhil scholar with you. I am going to present the very topic under the supervision of Professor Dr. Sara Afzal, who is our dean. As we all must be knowing better than me that to critically appraise a clinical trial, we should have to use an consort checklist. So this is our consort checklist, according to which different parameters are being defined, and we are going to critically appraise every step one by one. Now, to start with the consort checklist, I would like all of you to have a critical mindset before going on to me describing further. As the title indicates, it's semaglutide and cardiovascular outcomes in obesity without diabetes. This is the author's information and DOI along with the other available journal descriptions. As you all must be knowing better than me that semaglutide is available in the market by the trade name of Ozempic. Ozempic is a very sort of hyped drug among the youngsters in the Western world. Partly due to its beneficial effects in reducing the weight or obesity related other effects as well. Apart from its major effects as described by FDA when it was first introduced into the market in 2005, semaglutide or Ozempic was basically an obesity reducing drug in people with diabetes. It was a GLP-1 agonist as per its class effect is GLP-1, as we all would be having a background knowledge about, is a glucagon-like peptide 1 receptor agonist, which basically either would increase the release of insulin from pancreas or decrease the glucagon secretion afterwards. It would also be having some effects on the peripheral tissues in order to overcome the process of obesity. But in this typical article, as we can see that semaglutide and cardiovascular outcomes in obesity without diabetes. So we would be concentrating on a factor which would be without a diabetes. So as per the abstract of our article says in the background that semaglutide is a glucagon-like peptide 1 receptor agonist which has been shown to reduce the risk of adverse cardiovascular events in patients with diabetes. Whether semaglutide can reduce cardiovascular risk associated with overweight and obesity in the absence of diabetes is unknown. So we wanted to know that if in the absence of diabetes we would introduce semaglutide and a placebo controlled trial, what would be the effects in the cardiovascular events. So what methods they have used in a multi-center double-blind randomized placebo controlled event driven superiority trial. They enrolled 45 years of patients or older who had pre-existing cardiovascular disease and a body mass index, or that is the BMI, the weight in kilograms divided by the square of the height in meters, of 27 or greater, but with no history of diabetes. Patients were randomly assigned in a 1:1 ratio to receive once weekly subcutaneous semaglutide at a dose of 2.4 mg or placebo. Now for this very trial, which was being supported by and assisted by Novo Nordisk. They have basically provided with pre-filled pen formulations. One was containing a dose of 2.5 mg of semaglutide in a pen form, pre-filled, and other was having a placebo, which was having obviously no medication at all. The primary cardiovascular endpoint was a composite of death from cardiovascular causes, non-fatal myocardial infarction, or non-fatal stroke in a time to first event analysis. Now, time to second event analysis or tertiary event analysis, we were not concerned with that. Safety was also assessed. Now, semaglutide and cardiovascular outcomes in obesity without diabetes, as per the article, says that you can see there are two of the pre-filled pens available, one in the yellow color having a semaglutide and other in marked in the blue color as the placebo. Now, clinical problem identified here was glucagon-like peptide 1, which is a GLP-1 receptor agonist, can reduce the risk of adverse cardiovascular events in patients with diabetes. Whether the GLP-1 receptor agonist semaglutide can also reduce cardiovascular risk in patients with overweight or obesity but without diabetes is unknown. So, to further dig out, we would apply this clinical trial. Now, what was the clinical trial? As per the design here described, an international double-blind, event-driven, randomized, placebo-controlled superiority trials assessed the safety and efficacy of semaglutide in patients with pre-existing cardiovascular disease, overweight or obesity, a BMI of more than or equal to 27, and no history of diabetes. What was the intervention done here? 17,604 adults of 45 years of age or more were assigned to receive once weekly subcutaneous semaglutide, which was dosed as 2.4 mg or the placebo thing. The primary cardiovascular endpoint was a composite of the first occurrence of death from cardiovascular causes, non-fatal myocardial infarction, or non-fatal stroke in a time to event analysis. Now, as you can see in this graph, adverse events which would lead to permanent discontinuation of regime in the semaglutide or the placebo thing, death from cardiovascular causes, non-fatal MI or non-fatal stroke, there is a continuous uh, sort of correlation. In this, the patients were either forced to withdraw due to the ongoing adverse events, or they would have experienced the fatal causes or other non-fatal stroke or non-fatal MI. Now, what were the results? As per the efficacy, semaglutide was superior to placebo in reducing the incidence of primary endpoint events during all of this period, which was approximately 40 months. Now, what was the safety? More patients discontinued semaglutide than placebo because of adverse events, a result driven largely by a higher incidence of gastrointestinal symptoms with semaglutide, which were very well known as nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and to some extent the stomach fullness, because um, as I have already described, that semaglutide either would be resulting in an increased insulin secretion, decreased glucagon, or a satiety feeling in the stomach, or decrease the motility. So they would have to withdraw mostly due to these causes. So, as you can see in the graph here as well, overall the patients which were to withdraw with the semaglutide or other, mostly of them were due to GI disorders. What are the limitations and remaining questions in this article? As described, the trial was limited to patients with pre-existing cardiovascular disease. No other comorbidity or diabetes was basically taken in this very article. The diversity of the trial population did not duplicate a globally representative population. Specifically, women and patients identified as Black were underrepresented. What are the conclusions? In patients with pre existing cardiovascular disease and overweight or obesity, but without diabetes, once weekly subcutaneous semaglutide at a dose of 2.4 mg was superior to placebo in reducing the incidence of death from cardiovascular causes, non fatal myocardial infarction, or non fatal stroke during a mean follow up of approximately 40 months. Now, we would try to step by step critically appraise the article. As per the title and abstract says, the checkpoints from the consort are: does the title identify the study as a randomized trial? Is there a structured summary covering design, methods, results, and conclusion? The title clearly describes the intervention and target population but does not mention it being as a randomized trial. The abstract also provides a detailed summary including the trial design, the results, and conclusions. It is largely compliant. That means this checklist is mostly done with. Introduction: is the scientific background and rationale adequately explained? Are specific objectives or hypotheses clearly stated? As per our appraisal says, the introduction provides a thorough background on obesity, cardiovascular risks, and potential of semaglutide, justifying the study. The objective is clearly stated to evaluate the semaglutide's impact on cardiovascular outcomes in the patients with obesity but without diabetes. So, this section is also fully appraised. Methods: is the trial design described, including any changes or post commencement done? Are participant eligibility criteria and recruitment settings detailed? Are the interventions described in sufficient detail to allow replication? Um, as per our appraisal says, yes, all of these points are being met with. As per the trial design, the article specifies that this is a multi-center, double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled trial which aligns with the consort requirements. The participants include the inclusion and exclusion criteria as well. For example, the age be more than or equal to 45 years, BMI more than or equal to 27, pre-existing cardiovascular disease, and no history of diabetes. Intervention is clearly described as for the weekly introduction of semaglutide and placebo. Dose escalation details are also given. What are the methods further to be appraised? Are outcome measures primary and secondary well defined? Are there explanations for changes, if any, made during the course of time? Is the sample size determination and any interim analysis explained? So, our appraisal says that in the outcomes, yes, primary and secondary endpoints are clearly defined, with sufficient details provided for the primary cardiovascular composite endpoints. What is the sample size determination and interim analysis? Justification for sample size, that is 17,500 patients, is provided with the statistical power requirements in detail. As per the randomization checklists are randomization processes, sequence generation, concealment, and implementation detailed. Is a blinding, if done, described adequately? Randomization and blinding, yes, it is being met with. Randomization and blinding methods are described, though the allocation concealment process is less detailed. Are outcome data and associated statistical measures presented? Are harms or unintended effects reported? Yes, the baseline demographic and clinical characteristics are comprehensively described, ensuring the compatibility between the groups. What are the outcome results for primary and secondary endpoints are presented with appropriate statistical analysis, confidence intervals, and p-values for all of the analysis are also included. Now, as per our article says, for the reference measures, a Cox model Cox model is basically the regression analysis thing, but it is basically a hazard regression analysis in which we can basically, as in the ANOVA or other analysis or regression analysis, we are concerned with only the one of the demographic features, but in Cox model we can use more than two or three even the demographic features or the variables to be measured. And in the Cox model, we can even compare between the quantitative and qualitative variables as well. So a Cox model, as described in the section 2.3 of this paper, is used for the interim testing using the fixed sample one-sided lower p-value from the score test. Only a fixed sample p-value below the boundary specified by the error spending function will allow the DMC to recommend early trial termination for superiority. The SAP includes elaborations on statistical analysis outlined in the protocols for the SELECT trial. SELECT trial is semaglutide effect, as the title says, as well as details on the interim testing for superiority. Now, SAP analysis is basically done in most of the nutritional sort of ongoing researches, and in which we are concerned basically with the BMI or weights or anything else. So any changes to the SAP final version 1.0 will be documented in a change log. So an external independent statistical service provider will conduct the interim analysis. For this reference, also see the section number 3, which is given in your article. Novo Nordisk is responsible for all other statistical analysis and reporting of data, but will remain blinded to treatment allocations until database lock, which is DBL. So another checkpoint, are adverse events well documented? Yes, adverse events are well documented, including the higher discontinuation rate in the semaglutide group due to gastrointestinal issues. As per our article says, adverse events leading to permanent discontinuation of semaglutide or placebo occurred in 1461 patients, which approximated to about 16.6% of the trial population in the semaglutide group, and 718 patients, 8.2%, in the placebo group. For this, the p-value was less than 0.001. These events included the gastrointestinal disorders in 880 patients out of the 1466 and 718, which was approximately 10% in the semaglutide group, and 172 patients, which was about 2% in the placebo group. In this case, p-value was again taken as less than 0.001. Gallbladder related disorders occurred in 246 patients, which comes out to be 2.8% of the trial population, and 203 patients, which was 2.3% of the trial population and placebo group respectively. In this case, the p-value was taken at 0.04. Now, what are the limitations described as per the consort checklists? Are limitations, generalizability, and balanced interpretations of results discussed? Now, our appraisal says that discussion interprets the results, emphasizing the semaglutide's cardiovascular benefits and providing the potential mechanisms. Limitations, for example, inclusion of only patients with pre-existing cardiovascular disease, limited diversity, are acknowledged, which aligns with the consort guidelines. Now, as per our article says, in the discussion group, GLP-1 receptor agonists are recognized to have cardioprotective protective effects in patients with type 2 diabetes. We conducted this trial to determine whether semaglutide, a potent long-acting medication in this class 25, would diminish excess cardiovascular risk associated with overweight or obesity in patients with no history of diabetes. Among 17,604 patients with a BMI of 27 or greater and a pre-existing cardiovascular disease but without diabetes. Semaglutide was associated with decreases in body weight and waist circumference. findings consistent with the known metabolic effects of this class of medications. The incidence of serious adverse events was lower among patients assigned to receive semaglutide than among those assigned to receive placebo. Uh, what are the other elements for the consort checklist? Are trial registration details, protocol access, and funding sources disclosed. As per our appraisal says, for the funding, the study acknowledges the sponsorship by Novo Nordisk, and potential conflicts of interest are also disclosed. What is the protocol and registration? The trial is registered in the clinical trials or GOV along with other details with the protocol registry, and supplementary materials are available for the reference. Trial phase 3B, as this document says, is a property of Novo Nordisk. Now, what are the strengths and the weaknesses as described in our article here? According to the consort checklist strengths, the article aligns well with most of the consort checklist items, providing a comprehensive report of the randomized controlled trial. As in all of the checkpoints which are to be met in the consort checklist are met. Weaknesses, limited details on the allocation concealment mechanisms, which are basically to be described in a further detail, are missing. Title does not specify randomized trial as per the requirements of the consort checklist, that the title must include an RCT trial or specify an RCT trial there. So this was basically a strong article for recommendation of the semaglutide and its cardiovascular events associated without diabetes. Now I would like to thank you all at the end of the presentation, and I hope that you have gained some of the knowledge which I have tried to share with you. Thank you so much.
Dr. Fatma, very nice presentation, and you have chosen a very hot topic that is being discussed everywhere, and not only in preventive medicine but also those who are dealing with obesity, overweight, and the complications of obesity and overweight, like diabetes and other important diseases. So this is a very good discussion and a very good insight into the article. And the best part is that you have described many things in it, including the strengths, weaknesses, statistical analysis, and the mechanisms that are operating behind the semaglutide studies. Would you please like to tell me about the statistical analysis that you have said that the Cox analysis has been done? So, what was the significance level while we have used the Cox analysis?
Okay, ma'am, basically at 95% of the confidence interval, significance level, I can't remember exactly which was being stated here, but it is being mentioned in the article because I couldn't remember it. If I would be having a closer look, I might be able to tell you. But Cox hazard randomization regression analysis was done in this thing, and a SAP analysis was done with this SAS software, SAS software.
Okay, as we all know that the Cox hazard model is the most powerful and it is a very flexible model. So the best thing about the Cox model is that we can test the statistically how the efficacy of the treatment is estimated. So it is very important to know the level of significance as I have asked you, and what is the hazard ratio that has been described in Cox analysis.
Okay, ma'am.
What was the hazard ratio that described in Cox analysis?
Ma'am, I guess I have gone through the article, but I don't really remember the thing right now. I can.
Because doctor hazard ratio is very important, especially whenever we are dealing with the treatments, because we have to see how much hazard it is posing to the population. So, if, for example, I'm just giving you an example that if the semaglutide, it is showing the hazard ratio of 0.7. So, what does this mean? It means that 70% people who have used it are getting the good effects of the drug. However, those about zero point 0.3, they are those who are getting the side effects, and even they are those who can be having the deaths due to or the mortality that has been associated with it. So whenever we talk about the hazard, we know that the percentage can also be calculated out of it. If I am talking about 0.3, it means it is about 30%. So it should be clear enough that the numbers are important as we talk about the hazard ratio, and it gives us the indication of the baseline hazard, the
Okay.
intensity of the mortality, yes, and how the intensity of the mortality is present as compared to the placebo group.
Yeah, ma'am, according to this table, the hazard ratio was taken at 0.83 at an overall one-sided significance level of 0.25.
Okay, thank you very much. It is a highly significant, and
Yes, ma'am.
we know that risk that is present is, as I have told you, that only 30% people who are having the adverse events, including deaths. So it means it is about 0.83, 83% are on the safer side. So
Exactly.
thank you very much, Dr. Fatma.
Thank you,
have
ma'am.
generated a very good discussion on a very good article. And next, from the next month, we have planned that the journal club would be in Institute of Public Health, and all the postgraduate students will come to the Institute of Public Health at 9 a.m. in order to discuss the journal. So we would not have the online class of journal club on Saturday from February onwards. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending
Thank you,
it.
ma'am.
Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.